All right, thanks.
Right. Excellent. Well, hello everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining. As we were just discussing today, I'm going to share with you one of the ways that I use AI to, let's say, put me on the right track to find vulnerabilities in an API. Now, there are many ways of using AI to, in offensive security today, but what I'll be focusing on today is using an AI feature in Postman called Postbot. So today I'm going to be assuming that you have at least a basic understanding of Postman, which I suppose you do, as it's a pretty central tool in API security. So hang on. I'm trying to move forward with this. There we go. Okay, so I'm Edward Lichtner. I am a tech journalist. I'm working as a freelance, and I'm based here in Paris, in France. And just to give you a good laugh, this is what I look like when I'm at work. I've been interested in hacking for about 3 years now. And for the moment, I'm doing this mostly as a hobby. And 2 years ago, I read Corey's book, Hacking APIs, and did that over the summer. And that was kind of a revelation for me. And that's when I decided to focus most of my hacking time on APIs. So that was, 2 years ago. I now also have my own blog where I write about my little API tricks, and you've got it right here. So you're welcome to check it out if you are at all interested. And well, when I'm not doing all of this, I also happen to be a freediver and a freediving instructor. So when I need to let some steam out, which happens from time to time, you will usually find me doing some depth training somewhere in the south of France or in Egypt or anywhere else in the world. And I'll also do some pool training several times a week here in Paris. So yeah, that's me. So let's get back on track. So what's Postbot? Well, it's a feature in Postman that lets you type an AI prompt that will give you a test script. And then you can run that test script on one of the endpoints you're investigating, or even on a series of endpoints. Now, you can also use Postbot along with Postman's collection runner. And this lets you test an entire collection automatically. Now, if you bring these two features together, Postbot and the collection runner, you really have a killer combination. But before we go any further, I'd like to show you how you can use Postbot. And hang on, just make a pause on the video for the moment. Yeah, cool. Yes, I'll be doing this using a deliberately vulnerable API called Crappy that I'm sure most of you are familiar with, as Crappy is quite extensively used in the API penetration testing course here on APIsec University. Okay, so here we're in Postman. We have our Crappy collection here. Yeah, here we go. So we've got a Crappy collection here. Now we can click on the name of the collection. And that takes us to the collection. Let's just make sure we have the tests tab selected. We click on the Postbot icon at the bottom of the screen. And then we can type in a prompt. So here, let's say, write a test that passes if there is a JSON Web Token in the request headers. So basically, here we're looking for endpoints with authentication. Okay. Right. So Postbot does its job and gives us a script. If we click here on View More, then we get the detail of the script. So let's copy that, close the dialog box, then close the Postbot window, and paste it in the test tab. Okay, here we go. Now, if we click on the Run Collection button, this takes us to the collection runner. So here we have a list of all the endpoints in our collection. We choose Run Manually. We want one iteration, and all we need to do now is click the Run Crappy button, Crappy being, of course, the name of our selected collection. So Postman runs the test on each of our endpoints. And when it's done, we see we have 26 endpoints that passed our test and 6 that failed. And if we click on one of them, we go straight to this endpoint, and we can then investigate it further. So yeah, this is how it works. Shelby, would you switch me back to the slides? Perfect, thank you. Right, so let's see how we can put this in practice. Suppose we want to look for Bowler vulnerabilities. We could do that by looking for authenticated endpoints with a URL parameter that we couldn't try to abuse. So we could use the following prompt: add a test that passes if there is a JSON Web Token in the request header and if the character question mark is anywhere in the request URL. Okay, so here we want authenticated endpoints, hence the request for a JSON Web Token. And we want a question mark in the URL because this will tell us that we have a parameter that we can try to abuse. So here Postbot generates a test for us that we have right here. We go to the collection runner, we run the test on the full collection, we run manually, one iteration, and then we click the run button. Okay, so here we see we have 4 endpoints that pass our test. And now among those endpoints, there is one that kind of stands out. It's a GET request, it's an authenticated endpoint, and we have a parameter called report ID. Now, this in Crappy is, as you know, if you've already played with Crappy, you have an endpoint that allows you to submit a mechanic report if you want to get your car fixed. And so this endpoint brings us to our mechanic report. Now, what happens is that if you change the value of the report ID parameter right here, then you can access other users' mechanic reports. And so that's a textbook example of a vulnerability. So as you can see, Postbot didn't do anything fancy that we can do ourselves manually, but it pointed us in the right direction. So that's particularly interesting if you are up against an API with a massive collection of, say, maybe over 100 endpoints, and you don't know where to start. Well, Postbot will point you in the right direction and will give you shortcuts. So that's a really interesting aspect. Now, I have to be honest with you. The code that Postbot generated in the first place didn't work straight away. It threw an error saying that pm.request.url.includes question mark is not a function. So I had to go into the code and change something. So when I took away this little part in red, pm dot, then the test worked fine, and you have the corrected text at the bottom of the slide here. So what this tells us is that, as you will often see when you use AI-generated code, is that you sometimes need to go in and clean up the code a little bit. It's no big deal. You don't need to be a JavaScript guru to do that. Just a little understanding of JavaScript is enough. And also, you can work things out by comparing scripts that work and scripts that don't. And having said that, a majority of Postbot scripts actually work fine the first time around, but sometimes you need to do a bit of tweaking. Okay, so let's look at another example. I hope everyone is still with me. Okay, let's look for endpoints that leak other users' emails. So we could give Postbot the following prompt: add a test that passes if there is an email anywhere in the response body. Now, in similar situations, I sometimes saw Postbot using a regex to find text strings of particular interest, but in the present case, it took the easy way and is just looking for strings with the @ symbol in the response body. So it's the easy way, but fair enough. So if you run this test on the crappy collection, the test will bring back this endpoint that we have right here. Now, if you're familiar with crappy, you will know that this endpoint brings back some personal data of other users. And so here, I included a screenshot of a detail of the response body. I hope it's big enough for everyone to see. So we can see that we have information on a user called Pogba, and this includes their email. And looking at the entire response body, you will see that there are similar details for 2 other users. So with this endpoint, we end up with emails of 3 other users on the system. Now, there happens to be another endpoint in crappy with a vulnerability that lets you change a user's email without confirmation. So having these 3 emails is a pretty good first step towards a full account takeover. So yeah, pretty good find altogether. Okay, you ready for another example? Okay, let's go for it. So what we've seen so far is pretty simple scripts running on the entire collection using the collection runner. But there are other use cases for Postbot. Here's another example of a more complex script that we can use as a fuzzing tool. Now, do you remember the endpoint we came across earlier in the first example I used, and that endpoint leaked other users' mechanic reports? Remember that? Well, we could use Postbot to test this endpoint for a bowler vulnerability. So let's try this prompt. Add a test that loops through numbers 1 to 15 and pollutes the report ID parameter of each request. Pass the test if more than one response has a 200 response code. So what we're trying to do here, we know this endpoint brings back a 200 response code on valid requests and a 400 on requests without proper authorization. So this is why we're asking for a 200 response code. Now, we also have our own user with a mechanic report on the system. So this is why we want to test for more than one response, as the first valid response will likely be for our own mechanic report. And since we're looking for a bowler vulnerability, we want to look for other users' reports. So this is why we want more than one positive response. Okay, so this is the code that we get for our tests. So you can see here that it tests for a 200 response code, and the test is set inside a for loop that runs from 1 to 15. Okay, now when I ran the tests originally, all of the instances failed. You can see at the bottom of the window here that all of them failed. We have the little red fail button, and you can see them here with a parameter value of 5 and 6 and 7 and so on. Now, the reason why all of these failed is because the test is run as an unauthenticated user. So to change that, I manually added my own authorization header. So I'm sorry, I know you're not supposed to smear code all over your PowerPoint presentations, but so this is what I added in the script. We have an authorization header. We have as the value the word bearer, and then all that you have underneath is the JSON Web Token of the user that I have on the system. So when I ran the script, then as you can see, some of the tests started to pass. So we can see here that we have a parameter value of 6 and 5 right underneath it. And these two tests actually run and give us a positive result. So if we click on one of these endpoints, it brings us to the full request, and we can see here that we have the detail of a report that belongs to another user. Okay, so we found the bowler vulnerability that we were looking for. Now, you're probably thinking, why on earth are we doing all this when it would be so easy to do it with Burp Intruder? Well, first of all, this lets you test an endpoint without even leaving Postman. This saves you from proxying the request into Burp and then switching into Burp Suite, going into Intruder, and running running an Intruder test. Also, the point here is to show you how far you can go with Postbot. And really, we can go a lot further than even that. Okay. So before I let you go, just a couple of things you need to know. A free account in Postman will give you only 50 Postbot calls and 25 manual collection runs every month. And your limit is reset on a monthly basis. And Postbot calls and collection runs, believe me, they tend to run out pretty quickly. Now, if you want more Postbot calls, you can get an optional $9 monthly subscription that will give you unlimited Postbot usage. Now, this works with all Postman plans, including the free plan. Now, if you want more collection runs, that is a bit more costly. You will need, first of all, to switch to a basic plan, and that will cost you $14 a month. And you also need to add an option for unlimited collection runs. And that is charged $49, and that is on top of the $14 that you need for a basic plan. So it's really up to you to decide if this is really worth your money. Now, as far as Postbot usage, what I suggest, if you run out of calls, I recommend you switch to ChatGPT or Custom GPT and try your prompts. ChatGPT usually does a pretty good job generating Postman tests. Now, the other interesting thing with ChatGPT is that it also gives you an explanation of how a given test works. So if you generate a test with Postbot and you need some details on, how it works, then ChatGPT is probably a good destination to get an explanation. So that's pretty useful, especially if you're a beginner. Also, I very much recommend that you keep track of all the successful tests that you've generated with Postbot so that you can use them later on other assignments. What you need to keep in mind is that once you have generated your test with Postbot, you can use that test as much as you want, and it doesn't count as extra Postbot calls. You use Postbot once to generate your test, and the test is yours, so you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, so yeah, this is pretty much all I have for you today. If you want some literature on what we've covered, I have a blog post on Postbot with some details that you can have right here. It covers pretty much the same things as what I've shown you today, but some aspects are a bit different, and you have a bit more detail. On my blog, you'll also find a full walkthrough of the latest version of Crappy, with all the different tasks explained, and I'm using Postbot for a number of them. I'd also like to draw your attention to a post on Dana Ebb's blog, where he looks at different ways of using Postbot. So that's the second line here on my slide. And I need to give credit to Dana, as it's actually after reading this post on his blog that I got interested in Postbot in the first place. And then I looked into it and took things further by bringing in the collection runner. So yeah, definitely worth a read. Corey, I'm not sure how we are going time-wise.
Yeah, we're okay on time. After
Okay,
this,
cool.
we do have a break. You had a perfect segue because Dana Epp is next up on our list of speakers.
Cool.
He'll be speaking with everyone after a quick 30-minute break. And yeah, thanks so much. Great presentation.
Okay, so yeah, you've got my socials here. If anyone wants to get in touch and have a chat, I'm always happy to talk. The best way of reaching me is probably either email or LinkedIn. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching. And do we have time for a question, or do we go straight into the break?
Let's look through the questions. Let's see.
Oh, there's a message by George Pagel saying Edward Lichtner, a real one.
Yes, I like
So
that
that's
one.
not really a question, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah, so here we have, can you please explain how to triage SQL injection in Postman?
Well, I haven't gone into that one, at least not with Postbot. I have used Postman for SQL injections. I haven't got something that I can take just out of the top of my head, but I have a section on my blog with walkthroughs on several vulnerable APIs. And I think I can remember I used SQL injections on the Crappy walkthrough and on the VAPI walkthrough, if my memory is correct. So yeah.
Sticking in Postman has that really powerful feature, find and replace, where you can go through the entire collection. And if you have those areas that you really want to fuzz and test those, you can create environmental variables and have some SQL injection payloads that you could use, and then run a collection runner to test it that way. And of course, diving deeper, you could proxy your traffic over to Burp Suite at any point, and then really hammer it with SQL injection payloads.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing most of the time, starting the work in Burp Suite, and then whenever I see that something sticks, I usually switch over to SQL Map.
That's great. Yeah, it looks like those are all the questions that we have. Just a lot of people congratulating you on a great presentation. I completely agree.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, just one question. I kind of thought that maybe I put everybody to sleep, but apparently not.
Not at all.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much for being on, Edward. Next up, we have Dana Epp, who will be sharing here in about 38 minutes. And so we'll cut away to a break and see you back here then.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Corey, and I'll take a look at the rest of the presentation. I'll definitely be watching what Dana has to say. Just let me grab some beer and popcorn, and I'll be back.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being on.
Bye for now.